When I turned 20, my grandfather's lifelong friend, now the wealthiest man in the country, summoned me into his lavish study, spread glossy photos of each of his grandsons across the mahogany desk, and coldly instructed me to choose one as my husband, as if I were selecting a prize rather than forging a lifetime bond. In a moment of profound clarity, faced with a choice that would shape my destiny, I decisively selected Nathaniel Chapman as my husband. This decision left everyone bewildered, considering my previous life's consuming devotion to George Chapman. In that past existence, my marriage to George, a union driven by my unrequited love, led to him inheriting the bulk of his grandfather's fortune. However, soon after, he began a clandestine affair with my sister. Though my parents, enraged, sent her abroad, George believed I had exposed them and harbored a bitter resentment towards me. He openly flaunted his infidelities, surrounding himself with women who resembled my sister, and cruelly replaced my medication with a slow-acting poison. I died, pregnant and heartbroken. Now, reborn, I resolved to let them have each other. Leaving Mr. Chapman Sr.'s study, I encountered George and his cousins. Their usual taunts began. George sneered, "Are you trying to get Grandpa to speak for you again? Haven't you exploited your grandfather's war story enough?" I remained composed. "Mr. Chapman Sr. invited me. He's throwing a birthday party for me tomorrow." His cousins froze. The elder Chapman hadn't involved himself in family affairs for years. They knew this was more than a party. It was a test. He had informed me that whoever I chose at 20 would inherit his estate and lead the family. Their mood shifted instantly. "Congrats, George," one cousin remarked. "Looks like you're finally getting what you want," George added, turning to me. "But once we're married, we'll lead separate lives. That's the only way I'll agree." I was taken aback. Had he been reborn too? Just then, Isabella, my sister, appeared, wearing a short skirt and feigning a faint cough. George rushed to her side. "You shouldn't be out when you're sick." He glared at me. "Did you really need a chaperone just to come here?" As they departed, George muttered, "Keep acting like this and there's no way I'm marrying you." On my birthday, they arrived late. Her cheeks flushed, his neck bearing obvious marks of intimacy. Once, this would have devastated me. Now, I simply overlooked their attempts to provoke me. George produced a velvet box. Before he could offer it to me, Isabella snatched it. "It's the limited edition bracelet. Impossible to get." George smiled. "Then it's yours." She feigned hesitation, and he insisted. "As long as it's mine, she'll think it's perfect." Laughter filled the room. George looked at me, still maintaining his facade of graciousness. "I'm going to be head of the family. I won't be tied to one woman." Then he leaned closer. "Since you're being good today, here's a reward." He offered the gift again, but I turned away. "Have some respect, Mr. Chapman?" He froze. "Respect? Aren't you the one desperate to marry me?" "Who said I'm marrying you?" The room fell silent. He scoffed. "You think you'd marry someone else? Nathaniel? He's sick and broken." At that moment, Nathaniel was wheeled into the room. He appeared frail, but I recalled Mr. Chapman Sr.'s advice. "Since you chose Nathaniel, say nothing for now." I saw the flicker of disappointment in Nathaniel's eyes, but remained silent. Let them laugh. Later in the car, Isabella flaunted her bracelet. "Even if you marry George, you'll never win his heart." I smiled. "You're right. I hope you grow up fast and marry him soon." She blinked, caught off guard, then smirked. "Pretend all you want. George loves me." Days later, during Thanksgiving, I returned to the Chapman home with gifts. Isabella greeted me in designer clothes. "George gave me everything. I told him I don't like flashy things, but he insisted." I tried to walk past, but she blocked me. "Why so cold? Love can't be helped." Then she burst into fake tears and collapsed. "Beatrice, how could you hit me?" George rushed in. "Are you serious? Hitting your sister?" I laughed bitterly. "You're so young, Isabella, already this manipulative." Before I could finish, George slapped me. I clenched my fists, but held back for the sake of the guests. Isabella clung to him, fake tears in her eyes. "Something's in my eye," whispers spread. Isn't that the Leighton girl fighting over a man? What a disgrace! George turned to me with disgust. Apologize. You're an embarrassment. But I had nothing left to say. Let them drown in their own game. I had already chosen my path, and it no longer included them. George's words hung in the air like a foul odor. I could feel the guests' judgment piercing through me, their whispers swelling into a quiet storm. My cheeks still burned from the slap, but what hurt more was the familiarity of it all. I had endured this pain before, and last time I had crumbled. Not this time. With quiet poise, I straightened my posture and met George's eyes without flinching. "You're right," I said coolly. "You did end up with a woman like me, strong, loyal, and unfortunately, blind for far too long." His jaw tightened. Isabella clung to his arm like a child clutching a prize toy. But I could see it now. How desperately she sought to outshine me, to provoke me. And in doing so, she'd revealed something far more valuable. They needed me to break. That was their power, my weakness. But if I no longer gave them that satisfaction, what would they have left? I turned to the guests, offering a soft smile. "I won't apologize for being falsely accused," I said clearly. "But I will excuse myself so that you all can enjoy Thanksgiving without theatrics." As I walked away, I heard Isabella's voice falter behind me, no longer quite so triumphant. George said nothing. That evening, I visited Mr. Chapman Sr. in his study. He sat in his leather chair, surrounded by dusty tomes and the scent of cigars and aged brandy. He looked up as I entered, eyes sharp. "You handled today well," he said. "Much better than last time." I blinked. "You remember?" He gave a dry chuckle. "You think you were the only one reborn, child?" My breath caught. "I made mistakes too," he continued. "George was one of them. But this time I'm giving you the chance to correct what I couldn't." I stepped forward slowly, heart pounding. "What do you want me to do?" "Marry Nathaniel and protect this family, not for its name, but from itself. George is a poison that runs deep in our bloodline. You were the only one strong enough to resist him. That's why I chose you." I stared at the man I once thought was just a bitter old relic, but now I saw the truth in his eyes. He remembered everything, just like me. As I nodded, I knew the real war hadn't even started yet, and this time, I would win. The next morning, I received a letter sealed with the Chapman family crest. Inside was a formal invitation to tea with Nathaniel Chapman. Just tea, nothing else. But my hand still trembled as I held it. The last time I had truly spoken to Nathaniel, he could barely lift his head. A man once full of laughter and charm, reduced to silence and shadow by a mysterious accident. In my past life, I had never dared to ask questions. I had been too consumed by George, too distracted by the pain he and Isabella caused me. But this time, I saw Nathaniel clearly, and I had a feeling there was far more to him than anyone realized. When I arrived at the garden pavilion, Nathaniel was already there, seated in his wheelchair, looking impossibly elegant in a deep navy suit. A book rested on his lap, half closed. "You came," he said, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I did." "I wasn't sure you would after yesterday," he added, eyes meeting mine. "You looked tired." "Tired of pretending," I replied. "But I think you understand that better than anyone." A brief flicker of amusement danced in his gaze. "You always were sharp, Beatrice, even when you tried to dull yourself for George." I sat across from him, startled by his candor. "You remember?" He gave a small nod, slow and solemn. "Not everything, but enough. Enough to know what he did to you, what they both did." The garden fell into silence. Only the sound of birds and the distant clink of porcelain interrupted our stillness. "I never hated you, you know," Nathaniel said quietly. "I hated how you looked at him, like he was the sun, and you were willing to burn just to stay close." I swallowed hard. I thought it was love. It was obsession, and he fed it. I didn't deny it, because he was right. Nathaniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a velvet pouch. From it, he withdrew a small, delicate locket. "This was yours once. You dropped it the night George humiliated you in front of everyone. I kept it." I opened the locket slowly, Inside was a tiny photo of me, barely 17, smiling with unshakable hope. "She looks so foolish now," I whispered. "She looks brave," Nathaniel countered. "She loved with everything she had, even if it destroyed her." I closed the locket and looked at him, really looked at him. "I'm going to choose you again," I said. A breeze stirred between us. Nathaniel blinked. "I know I'm not supposed to say anything until the time is right," I continued, "but you deserve to hear it from me. You're not a placeholder. You're the reason I came back stronger." He didn't speak for a long while, then he finally said, "If you choose me, Beatrice, this time I won't just protect you. I'll fight beside you." And in that moment, I believed him. But far away, hidden behind the curtain of the second-floor balcony, Isabella stood watching, and the twisted smile on her face said it all. She wasn't going to let me go that easily. The day after tea with Nathaniel, I received an unexpected visitor. "Miss Layton," the butler announced, "Lady Chapman requests your presence in the East drawing room." Lady Chapman, George's mother, a woman who, in my past life, barely acknowledged me unless it was to deliver a cutting remark wrapped in civility. I followed the butler through the long corridors of the Chapman estate, each step heavier than the last. She was waiting by the fireplace, a porcelain cup in hand, her posture as stiff and flawless as ever. "Beatrice," she said without looking up, "how strange that we haven't had a proper conversation until now, despite you being a constant presence." I smiled politely. "Thank you for inviting me, Lady Chapman." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit. I won't keep you long." I did as told. "You must think the family is in disarray," she began. "All these rumors, scandals, and rebirths." Her eyes flicked to mine. "But the truth is, chaos has always favored the bold." I said nothing. She leaned in slightly. "I'm going to be honest with you, Beatrice. I don't like you. I never did. You remind me too much of what I tried to escape when I married into this family, hunger, ambition, need." I kept my expression unreadable. "And yet here we are." "Yes," she agreed. "Here we are. You've somehow secured Mr. Chapman Sr.'s favor. Quite a feat. But I wonder, do you truly believe you're ready to become the next matriarch of this family?" "I'm not aiming to be a figurehead," I replied. "I'm preparing to be a shield." That got her attention. Her eyes narrowed. "A shield for who?" "For Nathaniel, for the estate, for the name, but most of all for myself." There was a pause, then to my surprise, she let out a bitter laugh. "You're clever, I'll give you that. But cleverness without cruelty won't get you far in this house." "I've had enough cruelty for one lifetime," I said coldly. She stood smoothing the fabric of her gown. "Then you'd better pray that your kindness doesn't get you killed." I rose as well, lifting my chin. "Thank you for the tea." She turned her back to me, but her voice followed. "One more thing, Beatrice. You should know Isabella's engagement is being announced next week." I froze. Engagement to George, of course. The announcement will be made at the Chapman Winter Gala. I suggest you prepare a proper reaction. The press will be watching. The room blurred for a moment as old wounds threatened to split open again. But then I remembered Nathaniel's words. "I won't just protect you, I'll fight beside you." I smiled. "Thank you for the warning." As I stepped outside, the frost in the air stung my cheeks, but I welcomed the chill. Let them announce what they wanted. Let them cling to their delusions. They thought they were staging my downfall, but I was preparing my rise. The day of the Chapman Winter Gala arrived, draped in frost and tension. Snow fell in soft flakes over the estate, blanketing its grand courtyards and marble statues in silence. Inside, however, the air buzzed with anticipation. The ballroom was ablaze with chandeliers and whispers. Politicians, socialites, and reporters packed the room, all waiting for the same headline: the engagement of George Chapman and Isabella Layton. I arrived alone, wearing a black velvet gown that shimmered like the night sky when I moved. No lace, no diamonds, just elegance, power, and quiet defiance. I didn't need to outshine Isabella, I just had to survive her performance. When I entered, heads turned, Eyes followed. I could hear their thoughts. She came. Does she not know? How desperate can she be? I let them look, let them judge. From across the room I saw George. He was dressed impeccably, as always, but something about him seemed off. His expression was tight, his jaw clenched. Isabella stood beside him in a blush-pink gown, delicate and glowing. She looked like a porcelain doll, fragile, flawless, and utterly fake. Their parents were all in position. The string quartet shifted into a soft melody, and then, with all the grace of a rehearsed show, Lady Chapman raised her glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, smiling thinly, "we are honored tonight to announce the engagement of my son, George Chapman, to Miss Isabella Layton." Polite applause followed. Then Isabella gasped, far too theatrically, as George pulled out a box and opened it. Inside, a massive diamond ring. The crowd surged forward for a better look, but I didn't move. I stood still, watching as Isabella extended her hand. George hesitated just for a second. Then I saw it. His eyes flicked. To me, not once, not twice, 3 times. And each time, the mask he wore cracked just a little more. I tilted my head ever so slightly and raised my glass toward him with a smirk. His fingers fumbled slightly as he slid the ring onto Isabella's hand. The applause returned, louder now, but no one noticed Nathaniel had entered the room, wheeled in by an attendant. He wore a charcoal suit with silver embroidery at the collar, an old family heirloom usually reserved for the head of the Chapman estate. Mr. Chapman Sr. followed behind him, cane in hand. The music stopped. "Forgive the interruption," the old man said, his voice cutting through the crowd like a blade. "But there's one announcement left to make tonight." Gasps rippled across the room. "Beatrice Layton," he called, turning to me. "Will you come forward?" All eyes snapped to me. I walked toward him, slow and steady, the sound of my heels tapping like thunder in the silence. He turned to Nathaniel. "As the rightful heir to my estate, Nathaniel has made his choice, and I support it fully. Beatrice Layton will be his bride." A collective gasp swept the room. Murmurs erupted. Isabella's face drained of color. George's mouth dropped open. And then Nathaniel reached for my hand. I placed mine in his without hesitation. "This engagement," Mr. Chapman Sr. declared, "is the only one that concerns the future of the Chapman legacy." The silence was deafening. George stepped forward, voice sharp. "Are you serious? Him? He can't even speak." "Again, Mr. Chapman," snapped, "and I'll strike your name from the family register." George recoiled as if slapped. Isabella's hands trembled, still clutching the diamond ring. I looked at them both, then leaned closer and whispered, "Congratulations on your engagement. I'm sure it'll be a beautiful disaster." And with that, I turned toward Nathaniel, letting him guide me toward the spotlight that was once theirs. The headlines the next morning were brutal. Billionaire Nathaniel Chapman stuns gala with surprise engagement. Family rift deepens as George and Isabella overshadowed by reversal of fortune. Who is Beatrice Layton? From forgotten fiancé to Chapman power player. I didn't need to read every article. The message was clear. The game had changed, and I was no longer the pawn. Still, the backlash came fast. Lady Chapman sent an icy letter of concern, warning me to tread carefully now that I was in the public eye. Isabella, of course, posted a curated series of teary Instagram stories, delicate, vague captions about trust and being replaced. The comments were flooded with sympathy. George? He stayed silent, but that silence was louder than anything he could have said. Meanwhile, Nathaniel remained calm through it all. He summoned me to the west wing of the Chapman estate, a part of the house I hadn't visited since my previous life. This time, the walls didn't intimidate me. When I entered, he was sitting by the window, sunlight casting a soft glow on his pale skin. "They're planning something," he said without preamble. "George hasn't backed down. He's just changing strategy." "What do you mean?" Nathaniel turned his head slightly. "You haven't noticed? They've stopped attacking you in public. No more jabs, no more scenes. That's not kindness. That's preparation." My spine stiffened. "They're planning to humiliate me?" "No," he said slowly. "They're planning to break you, quietly." I sat down beside him. Then let's not give them the chance. He looked at me, really looked at me. Are you ready for that? I've been ready since the moment I chose you. He smiled, just faintly. Good, because I have a proposition. Nathaniel opened a drawer and pulled out a file, thick, stamped with legal seals. This is a trust amendment. Grandpa wants me to take over the family holdings sooner than expected, but I can only do that if I prove stability, as in a real partnership, a real engagement. My heart beat faster. You mean a real marriage? He nodded. If we do this, we're not just pretending anymore. We'll be walking into a den of wolves together. I studied him in silence. In my past life, I had married for love, and it killed me. This time, I could marry for survival, and maybe something more. I reached for the file. Let's do it. Before he could respond, a knock echoed through the hall. It was the head butler. Miss Layton, he said nervously. There's an incident at the front gate. Miss Isabella is here, and she's made a scene. I exchanged a glance with Nathaniel. Send her in, I said calmly. Seconds later, Isabella burst into the room, mascara streaked, fury blazing in her eyes. You think you've won? She spat. You think marrying Nathaniel makes you powerful? Please, you'll never be a Chapman, not really. Nathaniel didn't flinch. Isabella, you're trespassing. She ignored him, stepping toward me. You stole everything from me. George, Grandpa's approval, even Nathaniel. He was supposed to die. He was supposed to be out of the way. My blood ran cold. What did you say? She laughed, bitter, shaking. I switched his meds. I've been doing it for months. It was easy. Everyone thinks I'm harmless, pretty, gentle little Bella. She spat the words like poison. He was getting better. I couldn't let that happen. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. It was Nathaniel, flanked by 2 guards. He froze when he saw her. Bella, he said softly, as if talking to a wounded animal. You did this to me. She looked at him then, and for a brief second, her mask cracked. You were supposed to love me, she whispered. But you never even looked at me. I looked at you, he said quietly, and I saw exactly who you were. The guards moved forward. She didn't resist. As they took her away, she kept murmuring to herself over and over. She ruined everything. She ruined everything. Nathaniel, and I stood in silence long after the hallway was clear. She confessed, I said numbly. To everything. He nodded, jaw clenched. I always suspected someone was tampering with my recovery. I just never imagined it would be her. We walked back to his room in silence. My hand never left his. Later that night, Mr. Chapman Sr. issued a statement to the press. In light of recent events, all future decisions regarding the Chapman estate and legacy will be handled exclusively by Nathaniel Chapman and his fiancée, Beatrice Layton, effective immediately. No denial, no attempt to protect Isabella. He was drawing the line. We were officially in charge, but the celebration would have to wait, because behind the press photos and polished appearances, we were still 2 people, recovering from betrayal, grief, and nearly losing everything. Nathaniel looked at me as I sat by the window. She won't be the last to try, he said. I know, I replied. But next time, we won't flinch. And as I watched the sun begin to rise, I knew the final chapter wasn't about revenge. It would be about rebirth. Our wedding was quiet, not because it lacked elegance. Everything from the winter florals to the candlelit aisle was breathtaking. But because we kept the guest list short, the emotions real, and the noise outside. No photographers, no press, no drama. Just the people who had stood with us when it would have been easier to walk away. Mr. Chapman Sr. escorted me down the B aisle himself. His hand trembled as he passed mine to Nathaniel's. Lead well, he whispered, and never let them turn you cruel. I nodded. Nathaniel looked at me like I was his anchor. I looked at him like he was my proof that love could grow from ruin. We exchanged vows with no theatrics, no performances, just promises. I don't want perfect, Nathaniel said, his voice steady. I want honest. I want fire. I want you. I smiled through the tears. And I want someone who doesn't need to be rescued, only believed in. That's who you are to me. We sealed it with a kiss that didn't spark applause. It sparked peace. In the months that followed, the Chapman name changed because we changed it. We rebuilt the estate's foundation, firing corrupt board members, launching new philanthropic projects, and quietly dissolving old, toxic alliances. Where once there had been ego and greed, we planted roots of something stronger, a legacy built with intention. George fled the country, his name still tarnished by whispers. Isabella was committed to a private facility, and though the press occasionally tried to revive their stories, no one cared anymore. Their chaos didn't matter now, not when the future finally belonged to someone else. To us. One morning, I woke up before Nathaniel and found him reading by the window. The light hit his face just right, clear-eyed, stronger now, more at peace than I'd ever seen him. "Do you regret any of it?" I asked softly. He looked up. Not a second. I walked over and slid into his lap. "Not even the parts where we were, both nearly destroyed?" He kissed my shoulder. "Especially those. They made you choose yourself." I smiled. "No. They made me choose you. And this time, I chose right." As the sun poured into the room, I realized the truth I had been too afraid to believe in my past life. Sometimes the second chance isn't about rewriting the story. It's about choosing a different ending with the same characters, but finally the right roles. And this time, I wasn't the desperate girl chasing a love that broke me. I was the woman standing beside a man who built with me. Together, we weren't surviving anymore. We were finally living.